Hello everyone, and welcome to another project in my garage. The problem I'm having now is a rear wheel seal leak, and I'm guessing the cause is a clogged vent tube. This is a 98 Chevy K2500 with a 14 bolt rear axle, 8600 GVW, and it has the full floating rear axle. Now, I don't put a lot of miles on this truck, and about 2 years ago I did a complete brake job all the way around, and the problem was already there then. When I took everything apart here, this is the left rear wheel, and when I took things apart it was all saturated with oil in there, and I just assumed that it was probably a bad seal, and so I replaced the seal and put everything back together thinking it was going to be okay. Well, it wasn't long till I started seeing oil again. And not knowing more about these axles than I did, I just assumed that I messed the seal up when I put it in. And so I took everything back apart and replaced the seal, put a new one in, put everything back together, and same problem. So anyway, I just drove it that way for a while. I didn't know what to do. I thought, well, what's going on here? Why does this thing keep leaking? I mean, did I get two bad seals? Did I actually mess them up both times? The last thing I wanted to do is take it apart again a third time and put a new seal in. So it ended up getting put on the back burner, and I ran it that way for a while. So now I'm going to go ahead and tackle this. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and change the oil in the axle right away too, as part of this project. So the first thing is to take the cover off of the differential, and so I'm going to go ahead and remove that, take all those bolts out, get a drain pan underneath to catch the oil, and that's going to be the first step. And now that the oil is draining out of the axle, the next thing is to jack it up and get the rear axle on jack stands and take the wheel off, and then take out these 8 bolts here that are holding the axle shaft in. And there's no retainer or anything on these full floaters, so all you have to do is take the bolts out and the axle will slide right out. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is pretty straightforward, so I don't think I'm going to video this. I'm just going to go ahead and get that stuff done, and then I'll be back with you. Okay, the next thing is to remove the retaining ring and that key on the top there, and then that nut. Okay, now we have the nut off, and you can see the bearings in there. So now we're ready to pull the whole drum off. And here's the seal. Nothing visibly wrong with it that I can see. I'll flip the drum over and tap it out from the other side. The outer bearing is here on top now, and you can see the inner bearing is down in there. So I'm going to take the handle of a wooden hammer and just gently tap down there on that inner bearing, and that should push the seal right out. Kind of go around, keep hitting around the circle. Okay, got it. Fell out. Here is the bearing. and the seal. Anytime you have a rear wheel seal leak on a straight axle, such as this rear GM 14 bolt, one of the first things, if not the first thing to check, is this breather vent on top of the differential housing. When you start driving, the oil in the axle is going to warm up and obviously expand. And so if the vent tube is clogged and the air can't escape there, it's going to take the path of least resistance. That pressure needs to go somewhere, and normally the wheel seals are going to be the weakest point on the axle, and so it makes sense that their oil will get pushed out there. So I'm going to pull this clamp off and get this hose off. If there is dirt in there, you're going to have to obviously drain the differential and take the cover off, because it's going to need to be cleaned out. You're going to get dirt down inside of there when you clean it out. I slid back the spring clamp, took the hose off, and it's completely clean inside. I blew air through. A little bit of dust came out of the vent there, but nothing much. And so the hose is fine, but this tube down here was full of junk. I forgot to get the camera on it before I started cleaning it out, but it was completely filled up with junk right to the surface, flush with the end of that tube. I'll show you what I'm doing to clean this out. I'm just taking a piece of wire like this, and I'm going down in there and just kind of going around. I put a bend on the end so it would go down around that corner there, and I got it to go the whole way down in there, and everything's completely loosened up in there now, and I pulled as much out of it as I could. And now I'm just going to take compressed air, my nozzle, my air hose, put that in there and blow through, and it's completely open now. So now let's go look at the other side and see what dirt came out. Okay, see that brown junk up in there? And you can see a few pieces down here. That's some of the stuff that came out of there when I blew air through the hole. And so anyway, I'll probably just take some brake cleaner or something and spray through there to try to wash that out before I put things back together. So I'll put the hose back on and we'll call that part done. So now I have the tube back on, and so obviously in my case here, that is hopefully what the problem was, because it was clogged and it was pushing oil out the wheel seal. So hopefully this will fix the problem now. Wow, what a mess. Oil everywhere. Look at those brake shoes. Filthy. Now, most people would say that you should replace these shoes whenever this happens, but I'm not going to do that. Okay, I have brake parts cleaner here. I'm going to spray this down and see how much of this junk we can get off. Oh yeah. Okay, ready to go back together. Just make sure you don't forget to put the bearing back in. I cleaned this bearing all up, and so we're going to drop that in there. Okay. It's all good. Now I'm going to put a little grease on this seal, just to help it go in easy. Also, I'm going to put a little bit in here. Okay, now you just need to make sure you get the seal in the right direction. The one side is completely closed up on this surface. The other side has a groove in behind here. There's actually an opening in there in behind this metal part, between the rubber and the metal, and this side is solid. Obviously, the open part would go toward the inside where the oil is, so we're going to put it in like this. Now I don't have any driver that's large enough in my bearing race and seal driver set, so I'm going to use this piece. Came out of my hub grappler kit, and it's about the right diameter for this. So I'm going to set that on for a nice flat solid surface, and I'm just going to tap that seal down in there. Just try to make sure it's going in evenly all around. Now I'm going to smear a little grease on the rubber here, on this seal surface. And also right here where the seal rides. Now this nut in here is not overly critical, how tight it is, but you have to be careful when you're tightening it up, because it'll spin freely until it contacts the drum here, and then if the drum is not seated in tight, there's a little bit of play there. If it's not really seated in tight, you'll think it's tight when it's actually not. So you gotta, as you turn it in, wiggle the drum and hold it, push it in with your other hand, and make sure that it's in, seated tight, and then just spin that thing till it snugs up. Okay, and then if you can go to the next closest notch, which my notch is right there, you can see it's fairly close to lining up with the key slot. So let's just tap it with our hand a little bit, a screwdriver. And that was pretty easy, so that'll work good. There's no way you'd get it around to the next one, so that's just snug there. That'll be good. Sometimes it'll go a little bit past and you can't get to the next one, but don't really beat on it or anything and try to do it, because that'll be too tight. So just back it off to the closest one, just as close as you can get it where it's really good and snug. And we'll put the key in, make sure it's clean. Okay, and now I'll put the retaining ring on. This little knob here goes right in that groove that the key is. Okay, let's make sure that's seated in against tight. Okay, got the drum back on and the brakes adjusted, snugged up pretty good. So now I'm ready to slide the axle in. Okay, I'm scraping off the worst of the gasket material with a razor blade. Just cleaning that all off of there. Now I'll take my roll-off bristle disc on my die grinder. Now, it'd probably be a little nicer to have a right angle die grinder, but I have an inline and it works. So I'm going to clean it up with this. Okay, you can see that shining up. I'll clean a little more here. Okay, I got the flanges all cleaned up. I took brake cleaner on them just to make sure I got all the oil off. And now this little magnet that goes in the bottom here, it's a little round, looks like a washer. It goes right in here, and make sure I'm going to put that back in. It had some filings on it, but it wasn't too bad. So it looks like everything appears to be in pretty good shape inside here. And I have the cover flange all cleaned up too, so I'm ready to go back together with this. Okay, I have gasket sealant put on the gasket. I'm going to go ahead and put some on the flange here. Okay, I'm ready to go on with the gasket. Okay, I got gasket sealant on the cover as well. I'm going to put some on this side of the gasket. Okay, time to put the cover back on. It's a good feeling. Okay, project completed. Everything's back together. Now I'm hoping this fixes the problem, but I'm going to go ahead and put the video together, and I'm going to drive the truck maybe a couple weeks, and I'll try to post something in the description to let you know whether this fixed the problem or not. So thanks for watching, and I hope this helps somebody out.